So I wanted to give you a little bit more of an in-depth look at what ethnocentrism is to dig just a little bit deeper. Hopefully the announcement here has clarified what that term means. But with terms such as these, it's important to go far past the dictionary definition. So to help those of you that are really struggling with this term, and it's something that we're going to really need to know and understand as we work throughout the rest of the semester in our work in diversity, I want to read you a little bit of a story about a friend of mine who is an Indian anthropologist. So if you'll bear with me for about the next 2 or 3 minutes, I'm hopeful that this story will help you understand not only what ethnocentrism is, but what it looks like. For the next few minutes, put that out of your head. Ethnocentrism, the textbook, this course, and just listen to this little bit of a story about my friend. So my friend's name is Chandra Thapar. She's an Indian anthropologist, and she's studying a unique tribe in Mexico's Tarahumara Desert, just at the north end of the coast. This culture that my friend is studying is called the Asu culture. And my friend's really fascinated with this culture because they revere one animal as particularly sacred in this culture, much like Indian cultures revere cows. So again, this tribe is called the Asu culture. And though it seems to be very highly developed and advanced, it has an overwhelming preoccupation with this animal, the feeding and the care of it, which the animal is called the rac. R-A-C is how they spell it. It's an animal much like a bull. It's pretty big, overwhelming almost in size, strength, and temperament. And in this Asu tribe, it's almost a social obligation to own a rac, if not own multiple racs. Some families, wealthy families, own 3, 4, 5 racs. And anyone who doesn't have at least one in the society is held in pretty low esteem and low regard because they're seen as too poor to maintain, too poor to have, too poor to keep one. And it's seen if you have more racs, the wealthier you are perceived to be. But unfortunately for the Asu population, the rac is actually not a very healthy animal, and it doesn't normally live past 5 to 7 years. So even though each family invests large sums of money just to get a rac, they also invest large amounts of money to maintain a rac because it has a tendency to need new shoes. Like horses have hooves. They've got to replace the hooves on these racs so that they can continue what they're supposed to be doing. There are rac specialists in each community, and perhaps more than one if a community is particularly wealthy. But however, because these specialists need to go through so much training and so much preparation to do what they need to do, it's often hard to find someone who can specialize in treating the rac, and when they do, it's often very costly to fix the rac if something is wrong. Now, at the age of 16, in the Asu community, many youths undergo a puberty rite in which the rac figures prominently, and the youth must petition a high priest in a grand temple, and then he's then initiated into the ceremonies that surround the care of the rac, and is permitted to keep a rac if his family can afford one. Now, the rac may be a beast of burden, and it has many habits which might be considered to be pretty detrimental to other cultures. First, the rac breed is increasing in number. There are so many racs in this unique part of Mexico. It's increasing at such a very rapid rate that the tribesmen have had to think about curbing the rac population. And now the Asu must pay to increase the amount of roads they have so that the rac can travel on them. The cost of smoothing the earth is costly, so again, everybody's going to have to kind of come in and pay a tax system there as well. There are so many paths needed now for the racs that people are going to have to move their homes, and the government is seizing some homes to create roadways for this animal. And the rac tends to be pretty aggressive and not have a great mind of its own, so we often find racs kind of colliding into each other and causing damage to each other. Also, the rac, because it's an animal, tends to have excrement, and that excrement is hurting the earth. It's sinking into the ground and damaging the earth in that area of Mexico. And worst of all, the rac is prone to violent rampages in which it runs down everything in its path. And estimates are that the rac kills thousands of members of the Asu tribe every single year. But despite the rac's high cost of its upkeep, the damage it does to the land, and its habit of destructive rampages, the Asu tribe still regards it as being essential to the survival of their culture. So that's a story about my friend, but it's not really about my friend. In fact, it's just a general story designed to get us to think about ethnocentrism. And you say, wait, what? I am more confused now than ever. Well, let's think about this. I said this was about the ASU tribe. ASU, let's turn it around. USA. This is a story about Americans and our preoccupation with the RAC. RIC. Let's flip that around. CAR. It's about Americans' preoccupations with cars. We look at cars and they cause a lot of damage. They're very expensive to have, get, maintain. They ruin the earth with their toxic output. They run people down. We've got to pay to maintain roadways. This is a story about us, but we didn't know that when we first entered into it. Let's think about how that applies to ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is about seeing the world through your eyes, your lens, and your culture only. And when we first think about this story as somebody not a part of the ASU tribe who doesn't even know what Iraq is, we think, well, that's pretty dumb. Here they are, so preoccupied with this animal that's ruining everything around them, that's doing terrible things to their culture. Why wouldn't they just get rid of it? We have glasses on that really inhibit our understanding of that tribe. And if we take a critical self-reflection, we see that our tribe, our people, our nation does the same thing. We become preoccupied with something that's harming us. It's a cultural element, and you can't understand it unless you're in that culture. So we need to be careful when looking at other cultures that we're not a part of, particularly when we criticize or critique those cultures. That's ethnocentrism. It fails to take into account the things that we have a blind spot for because we have not experienced them ourselves. I hope this has helped you understand. This, along with the text definition, should hopefully rein it in just a little bit more. And just know that ethnocentrism is about seeing the world through your eyes only. That is important. It's important for ethical communicators and leaders to share their perspective. But be careful of waltzing into the territory of critiquing or criticizing other cultures of which you are not a part. That's dangerous ground. And we'll talk more about this in the weeks to come as we look at diversity, interculturalism, and intercultural communication.